Hello and welcome to Dad and Swebb Talk Sports. I'm Swebb,
And I'm Dad.
and we are the dad and daughter duo talking about all of our favorite sports moments from the week. Dad, what's going on?
Not much.
You look like you've got some sun.
Yeah, had to come to Florida. I was getting a little pale, so I had to come to Florida.
You look like you've been wearing your bikini on the beach.
No, I don't think so, Swebb.
I'm just proud of you for getting out there because you probably couldn't have parked right on the beach. So you had to do a little bit of walking to get wherever you got to.
Swebb, I haven't walked this much in quite a while.
Good.
I
Well,
can't believe it.
you look good, kid.
Thanks, kid.
So it has been a jam-packed week of playoffs. Saturday was just a ton of action. I had an amazing Saturday because it started, and just for everyone who's going to watch us on Monday, we're recording during the Rangers playoff game, which was a questionable decision, but the Rangers just scored, and so the score is now 1-0. So I might look back over my shoulder a few times. But Saturday, I start with the Yankee game. The legendary John Sterling, radio announcer for the Yankees for 36 years, retired. So I had to watch the game. I had to watch the pregame ceremony. Then I go straight into, I maybe had like 30-minute break, and then I go straight into the Women's National Championship meet between LSU, Florida, Utah, and California. And then complete the day with the Knicks versus 76ers game 1 of the first round of the NBA playoffs. So it has been a fun week. There's been a lot of action. Shall we start with our typical back in the day? Now, this is where we talk about some of our favorite sports moments throughout our lives, whether we were playing in those moments or watching them. So, Dad, why don't you kick things off?
Well, my memory of the week is, and I spoke about this a few months ago, 1996 American League Championship Series, Yankees, Baltimore Orioles.
The Rangers have now scored twice, so now the score is 2-0. I think we should just keep recording
We should
because
keep talking.
they didn't do anything in the first period, and now the second period we want to start recording an episode of Dad and Swebb Talk Sports, and now they're up 2-0.
We
So
should keep talking.
you're welcome, Rangers fans. You're welcome. Go ahead.
So we're in the car. I'm picking you up from, I think, ballet. And Yankee playoff games going on. It goes into extra innings. And speaking of John Sterling, I started listening to John Sterling before he started doing the Yankee games. He did the Yankee games for 36 years on the radio. But before he started that, he had a sports talk show on WABC Radio 770 in New York. Every night the Yankees weren't on. And he would take calls. And people would call in. You know how these shows go. Can we trade 2 bat boys for Willie Mays? Can we trade this minor leaguer for Pete Rose? Can we trade this guy for that guy? And he'd kind of make fun of people and give you good insight. And he grew up in New York. He was a Yankee fan. And then down the road, 36 years ago, he became an announcer. So here we are, 1996, we're in the car, and game goes into extra innings. Yankees, Baltimore Orioles, game 1 of the American League Championship Series. Bernie Williams comes up, hits a home run to end it. And I really wish we could play that video. It is incredible. And that's when he first started with the Bernie goes boom, and burn, baby, burn. It was incredible. And your reaction in that call was off the hook. And at that point, you've been watching games all along, but I didn't know how serious you were taking it. But your reaction at that moment, you almost jumped out of the car for joy. I said, man, okay, I got her. She's a sports fan. She's in solid as a rock. And all these years later, look at you, Swebb. That's my memory of the week.
My back in the day is also dedicated to John Sterling. As I mentioned, the legendary Yankees radio broadcaster is retiring after 64 years in the business, 36 as the Yankees broadcaster. He recorded or did the play-by-play for, 5,600 games? I think the exact number is 5,631, including 5,060 of them being consecutive. He took his first day off, I think, because he was sick in 2019. But he's been the only voice that I've known as the voice of the Yankees listening to radio. I don't listen to radio much anymore because I'm not in the car regularly. But my memories of being in the car with you don't listen to music. You're listening to sports talk radio or games. And so I remember one specific night in 2003, the summer of 2003. It was like August 13th or 14th. There was a blackout in New York, in Long Island. And it's hot as anything. We have no power. Played tennis in the driveway for a bit with my brother. Then we tried to do as many things as we could outside. Then we start grilling up everything that's in the fridge and freezer. And then at a certain point, it's like, all right, what are we going to do? The sun's down and we're in this dark house. And it's also extremely hot on an August night in Long Island. And so we went for a drive and we just listened to the Yankee game on the radio. And so I just have countless memories. I'm not even sure who won the game. I just have countless memories of being in the car listening to games wherever we were going while the Yankees were playing. Or even there were times where you used to watch the game on TV and have the TV on mute and you'd be listening to the radio broadcast. So he is the only voice that I've known of the Yankees, and he has countless celebratory calls and home run calls for different players, and everyone knows the Yankees win, and I was fortunate enough to grow up in a time where they were winning a lot, so I heard that a lot. And, good luck to the next guy up, because everyone remembers Cal Ripken. No one remembers who replaced him. So, everyone remembers Lou Gehrig. No one remembers who replaced him. So hopefully that guy can make a name for himself. But John Sterling, the voice of my childhood, just so many good memories.
Good points.
So that was back in the day. As we mentioned, it's playoff time on both NHL and NBA. And I think that we should kick things off with the Knicks, because right now the Rangers are playing. The score is now 3-0 Rangers. For the record, ever since Dad and Swebb started recording today, they've scored 3 goals, okay? Don't ask me to record every game that they have.
In 8 minutes.
Don't ask me to record during every game that they have. I'd like to be watching these goals, but we got to do what we got to do. And if that means, changing things up, it's like changing your seat. So we'll just hope that they continue to score. So let's start off with the NBA playoffs. The Knicks, as we mentioned, faced the Philadelphia 76ers on Saturday night in Game 1 of Round 1 of the playoffs. They end up winning 111-104. The Knicks, it wasn't their best game, but I think the game was an encapsulation of everything that they've gone through throughout the season. The real story with this game was the performance of the bench. 3 guys coming off the bench: Mitchell Robinson, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Deuce McBride. And they go on to score, all in all, 42 points, grab 22 rebounds, and they're plus 84 on the game. So everyone else in the Knicks starting lineup actually had a minus for the game. The bench had a plus 84, and they were the real difference makers during this game. The Knicks start off a little bit slow in the first quarter. They end up down 34-25 going into the second quarter. Then Mitch, Bojan, and Deuce McBride come in. and they end up going 33 and 12 in that second quarter. So they were really the difference makers throughout the game. But Dad, what were your overall thoughts?
This was a gutty win, and this is why the Knicks are so tough. And I don't think there's any team in the NBA that wants to face them in the playoffs. This team is tough. They grind it out, and in key moments late in these games, they come up with the big rebound or the big defensive stomp or hit the big shot. And you never know who's going to do it. And that's the way you want it. You don't want it to be just one guy always relied to score all the points. You want so many different guys that they can't double team somebody late in the game. When the Knicks were winning championships in the 70s, you didn't know who was going to turn that knife in you at the end of games, who was going to hit the big shots. And as moving into the 80s, when the Patrick Ewing teams, he was a great Hall of Fame player, but everybody knew it was always him. And you can't just rely on one guy. And then past that into the 2000s with Carmelo Anthony, it was always him. It can't be that way if you want to win. It's got to be anybody. It can't be just Brunson. It's got to be Hart. It's got to be Brunson. It's got to be this
And
guy,
speaking
that
of
guy.
that, so Jalen Brunson scores 22 points, has 7 rebounds, 7 assists, but he actually shot 8 for 26 from the floor. So he didn't have his best game. We're very familiar this season with Jalen Brunson putting up 30 to 40 points. So that was not the best performance by him. But to your point, we had different guys step up. Josh Hart scores 22 points and grabs 13 rebounds, had 13 points in the fourth quarter, including a few big threes where the game was only the Knicks were only up by 3 or 4 points, and he ends up hitting threes to completely put a dagger in the game. So it was just I'm excited for everything to come, because if the Knicks can beat a team like Philadelphia, at times was one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, without playing their best brand of basketball, that means that this could be a very long run. And we know that Jalen Brunson's he's going to turn things around. He's not going to shoot 8 for 26 on Monday night in game 2. And all of these other guys, like Dante DiVincenzo, didn't have his best game. So Deuce McBride played a lot of his minutes in the fourth quarter because he had been playing so well. So to your point, it was just a perfect blend of different guys stepping up. Mitch Robinson played a lot more minutes in the second half because Isaiah Hartenstein wasn't having his best game. But talk about just a great team win of guys picking each other up. When one guy's not having his best game, another guy gets a chance and he ends up delivering. And Mitch Robinson played some fantastic defense on Joel Embiid. He's one of the best players in the world. Certainly, if he had been healthy all year, he'd be the leading contender for MVP of the league. The amount of skill that he has at 7'2", hits his free throws, which is quite impressive for a big man, but made some incredible passes, has great vision on the court that led to baskets by the 76ers, can obviously get his points and grab rebounds, completely changes the way guys play offense. So there were a few times that a Josh Hart or Jalen Brunson would try and drive into the lane to shoot, and Joel Embiid would be right there and they'd scurry right back out of the key. So he just changes the way that opponents play against him, and Mitchell Robinson kept him on lock. He just was uncomfortable. He wasn't putting up the best shots. So if that's the way that they play in game 1, I'd take that for the rest of the series, and I'd take that for the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah, but because it's the playoffs, it's not a regular season game, teams play defense differently. First of all, Philadelphia has a tremendous coach. He used to coach Toronto. They won a championship there. So he knows, and they have some good veteran players besides Embiid, Lowry. You've got to really lock in. You notice how they double team Brunson. They put taller guys on Brunson. They're not just going to let him float
They
around.
also played a bit of a zone and let Josh Hart shoot threes. And luckily he was hitting them on Saturday night. But they were essentially saying, hey, we're going to give up that shot because we don't think you can make it. And luckily for the Knicks, he was making them. So they definitely, they shut Brunson down. I don't think he's going to go and score 30 on Monday. We'll see what happens. I don't think this is going to be a sweep, but what I will say is I was very happy as a fan to see different players step up, because the minute this becomes just the Brunson show is the minute you get bounced from the playoffs.
You can't win like that. You might be able to beat Detroit in November like that, but you're not beating these top teams with one guy. You have to play team basketball, which they did. And Hart, all week, he hadn't been shooting good coming into the playoffs. So what did he do? He came early and practiced three-point shooting. He stayed late, and he came back at night to the gym and practiced and practiced and practiced. That's what it takes. It's like going to school. You want to get a good mark on a test? You got to study, and you got to study, and you got to study. First of all, you got to pay attention in class, and then you got to study, and you got to study, and you got to study. That's the only way success. It's all hard work.
And I continue to be impressed by the way that he rebounds for a guy who's usually playing at a position that he's undersized for. Like, he is the size of a 3-man, a small forward,
Or even a two, a
yeah,
shooting guard.
and he's playing like he's a power forward with the way that he grabs rebounds. He's just so dynamic. There were a few times balls where the rebounds bounced way away from the basket, and he just somehow ends up being there, saves a few balls from going out of bounds, and it turns into a transition points and things like that. And so I'm just continue to be impressed by the way that he is able to grab rebounds and the energy that he brings. I mean, it's the type of player that you grow up wanting to be on your team, because he can really be the X factor in terms of just bringing a ton of energy. Now, if he's hitting shots, that makes him extremely dangerous, because we know he's going to grab 10 rebounds a game. We know he's going to play 40 plus minutes. Like, we know that he's going to just be everywhere on the court. If he's hitting threes and scoring 20 points, that makes the Knicks very dangerous.
He's an incredible player. And he doesn't score big points every night, but he always gives you that effort. He always makes the big defensive plays. He always gets the key rebounds in big spots. He throws his body all over the place. He's a winning ball player, and he has a nose for the ball. And those are the kind of guys you need. And all those Villanova guys, those 3 Villanova guys, play pretty much the same. And that's why they won 2 championships at Villanova.
So in terms of this series, the Knicks played on Saturday. Now they'll play again at home on Monday night, and then they'll go to Philadelphia on Thursday and Sunday. So, you hope that they can just have a repeat performance. Jalen Brunson plays better. I don't think that they need to do too much differently than they did on Saturday. Another big key to the game is that they ended up grabbing 55 rebounds, 23 offensive rebounds. So this is a team, like, that's a hustle, that you can't teach that. That is going out and getting every single ball that goes up into the air. And so they ended up out-rebounding the 76ers by 22 rebounds, which is incredible when you think about the kind of size. And in Philadelphia, they're no slouches. So if they can continue to play like this, gosh, it's going to be a fun few months.
Rebounding is effort. Defense is effort. And you put that kind of effort out, and it helps having that home crowd behind you. And the key in the playoffs is winning your home games. You don't want to lose a home game, because now you're scrambling, and it's very hard to win on the road. So you want to win in the playoffs. So you want to win your home games. You can't let up. And my tip of the week, we'll talk about my tip of the week
So
later on.
so far, so good as a Knicks fan and for the team. As we mentioned, the Rangers are playing at the time of us recording. They're now winning 3-1 against the Washington Capitals. So this is game one of the NHL playoffs as well, for the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Rangers are the number one seed overall. They had the best record in the NHL. And so they'll play on Sunday night, then they'll go ahead and play on Tuesday at home, and then they'll go down to DC on Friday and Sunday. I remember years ago, 2013, 2012, 2013, where it seemed like every year we were playing the Capitals in that first or second round of the playoffs. So even though the Rangers are up 3-1 right now, and they were the best team in the league, and the Capitals are not necessarily as good as they've been in years past. They really, throughout the season, they traded away some of their veterans, and they started to rebuild and then managed to get into the playoffs as a wild card spot. You can never count anyone out, but all I've got to say is, gosh, these past 2 days of watching games being played at Madison Square Garden, the energy that the fans are bringing, you just love to see it.
Yep. These home games are crucial. I remember the last playoff game I went to with you was a Ranger playoff game. I think it was Boston, and they lost. And when we were coming out of that place, I said, you can't lose home games in the playoffs. You can't do it. If you
And
do
you
it,
don't go to playoff games anymore.
yeah, I stopped going to playoff games. You can't do that. You got to win your home games.
So we'll see. More to come there. The Yankees went on and won on Sunday against the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yes, they
So
did.
it's been a good week, a good weekend at least for our teams. This week will be all about playoff basketball and playoff hockey. The Yankees will obviously be playing throughout the week. The Mets will also be playing, and they've been playing quite well, winning games. So those are things that I'm looking forward to. Dad, what are you looking forward to?
Well, before we talk about what we're looking forward to, the Mets, they started 0-5, and they are 12-8. They are the hottest team in baseball. The hottest team. Every night it's a different guy. And like I mentioned, I think it was last week or the week before, I said the Met fans got to get off of Lindor. Well, because he's going to eventually hit, because he's one of the best hitters in baseball. And here you go. He's starting to hit, and other guys are chipping in. Severino, who has been riddled by injuries the last few years with the Yankees, he's pitching well. Manaea, who they picked up from San Diego, was a free agent. They picked him up from San Diego. He was always tough when he was on Oakland. Tough lefty. He's pitched well. And then some of these little pieces that you remember, I mentioned at the beginning of the baseball season, their general manager is good at putting a roster together of like nondescript players that fit and can play. Look at Bate. He couldn't hit his way out of a wet paper bag with the Yankees last year, and he's become he's hitting over 300 and hitting well. And he's always been a great defensive player. So he's good at picking up players that fit. And those Milwaukee teams that he put together always won the division. And I also mentioned that the Braves aren't the Braves. They're still winning, but I'm telling you, they're not the Braves. So we'll see what happens.
We will see. The Mets right now are on the West Coast. They're playing the Dodgers, and they took the first 2 games of that series, and the Dodgers are a great team, as we know. They've been one of the best teams in baseball over the past couple of
Hey, just
years.
so you know, the Dodgers aren't the Dodgers. Their pitching is very weak. I think it's wide open this year. And look at Houston. They're about, 8 games under 500? There's going to be some surprises.
Justin Verlander just came back. I know he's also pushing 40. But he
is 40. There's going to be some surprises this year, Major. It's wide open. Nobody should give up.
It's a long season.
Yep.
And the Yankees hit a little bit of a rough patch this past week. And then, so things can turn very quickly. We're only in April. So there's plenty of baseball to come. I will be watching the Knicks and the Rangers this week. I'm not going to be trying to do a dual screen of watching an April Major League Baseball game. Like, it's just not going to happen. I'll
Wait
be
a sec.
watching the Knicks and the Rangers.
If you have a TV, you have a computer screen, and you have a phone, and if you have a radio, you can follow 4 things at one time, Swebb.
Yeah, I can follow. What I choose to follow is different because you want to be locked in to a playoff game. You don't want to be worried about what's happening in game 20 of the season. Okay? So I'll be focused on basketball and hockey this week and for the foreseeable future. I'm always going to be watching the Yankees games if they happen to be played at a time when there isn't a playoff game on. But
well, the way this playoff schedules look, it looks like there's going to be a playoff game every night.
Yeah. So I'm busy. I can barely watch shows that I have. My DVR is jam-packed. Okay? I can't even watch shows that I watch regularly. So we got lots of things to do. And I'm sorry, Yankees, Mets, you're going to have to take a back seat. Get in the trunk for now, okay? All right. So, Dad, what are you looking forward to this week?
I'm looking forward to more action. I'm looking forward to watching a few games at one time and, see what's going on, Swebb.
Okay. Well, let's hope you don't fall asleep. If there are the more games that are on at a time, does that mean that you're likely to stay awake?
It just means
do you still close your eyes?
I rest my eyes once in a while, but it just means I have to have a cup of coffee nearby. You know what I'm saying? Some nights I have to go to the second cup.
If you're watching the playoffs, you don't really need coffee. With the way that these games have been going.
That's true.
And shout out to the LSU women's gymnastics team because they end up being the national championship winners this year in women's college gymnastics. It was an incredible meet. Like, this is something that I had to make time for because between all these games and all my shows on my DVR, whew. So the semifinals, just to break it down because we did a little breakdown last week, the semifinals were on Thursday, and Oklahoma, who is the 2-time defending champions, first rotation, they're on vaults, and a few girls end up sitting on their vault, which means that they didn't land it, which meant that they had to count a few falls in that rotation, and it completely took them out of the meet. They end up battling back and scratching and clawing back, but these meets are so tight, and you have some of the best gymnasts in the world, and certainly in college. You're not going to be able to compete if you end up having a few falls. And so then the same thing happened to Alabama. They had a few girls fall on the balance beam. They had to count a few falls, and before you know it, it ends up being a 2-horse race. And that the second semifinal, which was Florida and Utah, which came out of that second semifinal. The first one, LSU and Cal came out of that one. So the final was on Saturday. The meet was close. It was very tight. I think after the first rotation, there was only about less than 3/10 separating all 4 teams. And then things start to get a little tense. Someone falls, someone doesn't land as cleanly as you would hope to see in a national championship, and the scores start to open up. But LSU, the last rotation of the meet, they end on balance beam. So they're winning the whole meet, only separated by a few tenths. In that rotation, Utah had a miss on bars. Cal had a few misses, or on vault. Cal had a few misses on bars. Florida had already been out of it because they had to count a fall on the beam earlier. And LSU, it came down to the last gymnast. Someone had fallen in the rotation from LSU. 6 gymnasts compete. They count 5 scores. So if one girl falls, it's okay. If 2 girls fall, you have a problem. So it came down to the last gymnast on beam. Everyone, you could hear the arena, like, just holding their breath for every flip and turn and jump that she did on the beam. She ends up crushing it. LSU goes on to win. So I just love college sports because you just don't get that energy, and you feel for these girls. They're teenagers, early 20s. They've been training their whole lives. half the arenas in one color, and all the fans, the families, everything. You just don't get that the way that you would get in professional sports. So it was a really great meet, and I recommend that people follow women's college gymnastics next season.
And you know what? It's not just the women's gymnastics. All these women's sports, the emotion, the teamwork, the camaraderie is off the hook. The women's basketball finals and championships with Iowa, South Carolina, LSU, UConn, USC, West Virginia, all those teams, the emotion, the teamwork, the camaraderie, it was just incredible. And then when you spin over to the gymnastics, I didn't watch that whole meet, but I did see that last performance was just incredible. And the emotion, and then they bring the trophy out and hand it to those girls, and they're jumping all over each other. Last night after the Knicks game was over, before I started watching the Denver Laker game, I was watching college softball, Alabama and Arkansas. And again, just incredible competition. These women are tremendous. But it's the camaraderie and the teamwork and the emotion they play with. It's just off the hook.
The fun thing that I love about college now, in college basketball, a freshman might come in men's college basketball and be a star right out of high school. And he's a star, he's starting, getting great minutes, and then he's going to the league and trying to get drafted after 1 year. In women's college sports, you don't get that because no one's coming into any sport, whether it's volleyball, gymnastics, soccer, basketball. No one's coming in as a 17 or 18-year-old freshman, and they're that transcendent of a player that they can then go to the next level professionally after their freshman year. It just doesn't happen on the women's side. So the fun thing about women's sports is you get to see these girls come in as, scared freshmen, be put in tough situations, and have to deliver. And then 4 years later, they're the senior that you remember was a freshman that has just developed into like the star athlete on the team and across all of these sports. So that's one thing that I just love about women's college sports is you can actually watch these athletes grow up before your eyes and just become amazing players in whatever sport it is that you don't always get on the men's side. You can sometimes get it, but you don't always get it because sometimes these guys, they're only in college for a year or two and then they're out. So it's just, I just love college sports, both men's and women's, but there's something special about a lot of these women's college sports that's just really fun to watch. There's a lot of, it's not just the performance on the playing surface, but it's also the stories and the growth that you see over the course of 4 years.
Right. And they're more student athletes. They're actually doing schoolwork and they're not thinking about becoming professionals.
Well,
They're
now with
thinking
NIL,
about
you never know. There's a lot of more nonsense, but yes, they tend to take things a lot more serious. So that's it about sports. Dad, do you want to give us your tip of the week?
Yeah. My tip of the week goes back to something that you mentioned kind of a few months ago. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. Last night after the Knicks game was over, a lot of fans took to the streets of Manhattan chanting, "We want Boston." Whoa. Whoa. Philadelphia is real good. You're going to have to do everything in your power to beat them. And if you beat them, then you got to go play
The winner of the Bucks and Pacers.
Milwaukee and Indiana. Two real good teams. We all know about Milwaukee, and Indiana, I think, beat them 3 or 4 times this year. So they're real good. And the Knicks don't kind of match up well with Indiana. Indiana gave the Knicks a hard time this year. Okay? So then you have to get them. And then at that point, if Boston's still standing, now you face Boston. So let's not talk about Boston. Let's not talk about Milwaukee and Indiana. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. Let's go right and work on Philadelphia. That's going to be tough enough. One
I agree.
step at a time, one week at a time, one series at a time.
One game at a time.
One game at a time. Please. Man, oh man.
All right. So, Knicks fans, Rangers fans, don't count your chickens before they hatch. Make sure to follow us at Dad and Swebb on Instagram and X and YouTube and Rumble. Like and comment on our videos and share them with friends. We'll see you next week.
So long.
Thank you for tuning in to Dad and Swebb Talk Sports, the show where we cover all of our favorite sports moments from the past week. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and Rumble and follow us at Dad and Swebb on Instagram and X. See you next week.